Out of Order Podcast, Episode 5.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Welcome, Out of Order listeners, to today's episode. Today's sponsors are Liberty Classroom, where you get the history and economics lessons they didn't teach you in high school. And of course, you can always help out the show by becoming a Patreon and by using the Amazon links you find on the show notes page. Today's guest is Marcus Hirschhorn. He is a former IDF sharpshooter and combat armorer. He is a professional gunsmith, and you can find him on YouTube on the Marcus Max channel. Marcus and I jumped into an hour and a half long conversation where we talked about optics, concealed carry equipment, before we got to the actual Out of Order podcast interview. So I'm going to save those two conversations for another day, and I'm going to jump right in where we began talking about gun rights and religion and philosophy. And now, Marcus, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Good. So, Judaism and firearms, and why should Jews own guns? And I guess I have a whole bunch of questions mingled in there. Why should Jewish people own guns? Is there a theological reason, or a demand for them to own firearms?
Well, those are actually two different questions.
Yeah. Yep.
Why should Jews own guns? Mm-hmm. Question one. Question two, is there a theological responsibility for a Jew to own a gun?
Yeah.
So question one, why should Jews own guns? Mm-hmm. For the same reason as every other law-abiding American, and more so. Right? Why should any American own a gun? Because there are assholes out there who want to do shit to you. Right?
Yep.
Why should Jews own a gun? Because there are assholes out there who want to do shit to you, plus Nazis. That's it.
Right.
For the same reason as everyone else, plus more so.
Yeah. That's the shortest answer you've ever given, and I was expecting that to be the longest answer.
It's funny because a lot of people say that they're expecting, you're not the first person asking that question, and everyone else is asking because, I'm motor mouth. Everyone who knows me knows I can't shut up. Having said that, this is such a simple concept. There's nothing to elaborate on. There has never been a point in history where in every single country on planet Earth it's been safe to be a Jew. Now, at any point in history, there have been some countries where it's safe to be a Jew. But at that exact same point in history, there has been a different country where it is not safe to be a Jew. And it's not always the same country. Right? If you could say it's always been this one country, like it's always been Nazi Germany, well, it hasn't always been Nazi Germany. If it was, Jews would know. Just don't live in Germany. Problem solved.
Yeah. Yep.
But there's always been a country at some point or another where it's not been safe to be a Jew.
Yeah.
You cannot show me a time in history where this is not the case. So for that reason, it's very simple. And then that brings actually to your second question. Is there a theological responsibility? Now, this is a big debate. And I've heard different rabbis say different things. Mm-hmm. I'm of the opinion that the answer is 1,000% yes, for the reason I just stated. If you know that every single moment in history there has been a country where it's unsafe to be a Jew, and we know that there is a theological responsibility to defend yourself, and that's written several times throughout both the written and the oral law, then where do you come off not owning the means to do so?
So what's the counter argument? I mean, there's obviously a large population of Jewish people that say, guns are bad, we should ban guns, we don't need guns anymore?
Well, the counter arguments span from. It's an interesting question, and you asked two different questions. Number one, most Jews who you hear that are vehemently anti-gun like that are not actually Orthodox Jews.
Okay.
So these are the same Jews who will, ignore the parts of the Bible they don't like, ignore the parts of both the oral and the written law that they don't like. And I'll just give you the most obvious example is Reform Judaism when it comes to gay marriage, despite the fact that it's written, clear as day, black and white, that homosexuality is not allowed. Homosexual sex per se is a sin.
Okay.
And yet they'll marry two men to each other. So if they're willing to ignore something that's so black and white like that, so then that basically means that anything is up for grabs.
Yeah.
And if anything is up for grabs, then you're not actually talking about Judaism anymore. And I've said for years, Reform Jews are Jews 100%. That's not a question. The question is Reform Judaism a form of Judaism? And I'm of the opinion, no. It's a form of liberalism with bagels and lox.
Okay.
It's Jewish-flavored liberalism. It's chicken soup, it's bagels and lox, but it's liberalism. It's not Judaism. Because you can't basically gut all of Judaism, and this is what got my third account blocked from Loretta Weinberg's wall, is you can't just gut all the parts of Judaism you don't like and then say, hey, it's still Judaism. If you want to say, hey, I don't follow, fine. This is America. That's your right. But you can't, if this is a hammer and I say it's a wrench, that doesn't make it a wrench. It's still a hammer. So you can't gut all the parts you don't like and then call it Judaism. It's not Judaism anymore.
All right. So if someone were to say to you, I think you kind of already answered this, that, that happened in Nazi Germany, but that would never happen today, or certainly that would never happen here. So there's no reason for you to have a firearm, or at least not for that reason.
So I've heard the argument. This is America. It can never happen here. And that was literally what Jews said in Germany in the 1920s. And and this is the part that I really love, especially in post 2016. Every day, these same anti-gunners are trying to convince me that my entire side of the political spectrum is filled with Nazis.
Right.
Donald Trump's a Nazi, and everyone who follows Donald Trump is a Nazi.
Yep.
And you could say, look, it's just Richard Spencer and like 200 idiots in Charlottesville. But they'll say, no, it's 62 million people who voted for him are all Nazis. I'm like, well, if that's the case, then I need more ammunition. No, we got to ban this, we got to ban that. You can't have it both ways.
Right.
Either they're all Nazis, or I don't need a gun. But you can't tell me that they're all Nazis and I don't need a gun.
All right. I don't have a follow-up question.
So just to expand upon that just a little bit more even, let's say that the Holocaust never happened. Right?
All right. Yeah.
Hitler never got elected.
Yep.
World War II never happened.
Okay.
Or even better, pretend this is the year 1900. And you're going to ask me the same question in 1900.
Right.
Then I'm going to point to pogroms in Russia, where every time, something bad happens, the Jews get blamed and they push all the Jews out into the street and they massacre Jews. And then I'm going to point to you how, and that went on in the 17 and 1800s. And I'm going to point to you how the Spanish Inquisition and how many Jews got killed because of that. And I'm going to point to you how in the Crusades, which, let's be honest about it, the Crusades was Christians versus Muslims, and both of them killed Jews.
Okay. All right.
Now, wait, I'm going to pause right there because someone is about to point out, some idiot online is going to listen to this and say, he hates Christians and he hates Muslims. To that idiot, to you specifically, idiot, that's not what I said.
All right.
Okay?
Yep.
So now that we've cleared that,
Yep.
But it is a historical fact that during the Crusades, it was Christians versus Muslims, and both of them killed Jews.
Yep.
And then you could go before that. Okay, before that, there was this guy and then that guy. You can go back to the Romans and the Babylonians. You can go throughout 3,300 years since the Exodus from Egypt till, today. And it's always been happening. And you can always pick, you know, in this 50-year period, who was the bad guy towards Jews, and in that 50-year period, who was the bad guy towards Jews.
And do you, other than the fact that it's always happened, do you have a reason to think that it will continue? No, it's an easy question, but I figured I'd throw it out there for you.
Do I have a reason to think it'll stop? That's the real question.
All right.
If the sun rises every single day in the east, you don't have to ask me why I think it'll rise in the east tomorrow. You have to ask why I would think it would rise in the west.
All right.
Right?
Yep.
To assume that something would not continue as it's been going on since forever is the outlier. You have to assume it'll continue, and then ask why you assume it would all of a sudden stop.
So is there a specific threat that you see in the next 50 years?
To Jews in America or to Jews as a whole?
Oh, excellent question. We'll start with Jews in America.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
And the reason I say not necessarily is because right now things are in the middle. I know people say, oh, this is this is that. No one knows what it actually is. And I mean that in terms of the political climate. We had 8 years of Obama, and then now we're in the middle of at least 4 years of Trump, if not 8. And people are on both sides are saying, this is what this means, this is what this means. And the truth is, at the moment, you're inside of it, so it's hard to see it, you know, objectively from the inside. No one knows what it means.
Right.
So because of that, there's always doubt. Right?
Yep.
And let's be honest about it. The left has some merit when they say, yes, there are Nazis on the right. Not nearly as much as they want to claim. They want to claim that everyone on the right is a Nazi.
Sure.
But there are at least those idiots in Charlottesville.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
At the same time, there's also Nazis on the left. And when I use the word Nazi in this particular case, I mean Judeophobic assholes.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Look at you don't need to look any further than the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, Keith Ellison, who is a rabid Judeophobe.
Really? All right.
Extremely anti-Jew. Extremely. He's very much a Jew hater. The difference, for the most part, now this is not always true. Some of them are honest about it on the left. Not all. Most are not. The difference between the right and the left is that the Jew haters on the right are honest. And when I say honest, I mean they admit that they hate Jews.
Yep.
And the Jew haters on the left, oh, we don't hate Jews, we just hate Israel.
Right.
But let's blame every Jew in America for what Israel did, even if that Jew had never been to Israel his entire life and doesn't care one way or another about Israel. But we're going to blame him anyway. We're going to use him as a stand-in. So what does that mean? You're going to use every Jew as a stand-in for Israel? And don't take my word for this. There are videos of kids in college who said, you know, I was going into the Jewish frat house, and just because I was a Jew, I got beat the crap out of. You know, I got the crap beat out of me. And they said it's because of what Israel did.
Wow.
So if you're going to beat the crap out of every random Jew for Israel, so that means you're using Israel and Jews interchangeably.
Right.
Which I have no problem with. But then if you're going to say that every single time Israel does something wrong, Israel is the bad guy, or Israel, every time Israel and the Palestinians get into it, that Israel is doing something wrong and Israel is the bad guy, which the Democrats always say,
Yep.
you don't have to look any further than that self-hating Judenrat capo named Bernie Sanders. May he burn in hell.
Okay.
Get cancer of the eyeballs and burn in hell. Right?
Yep.
To know that they hate Jews. Even the Jewish ones hate Jews. Bernie Sanders is the perfect example of that. So you're going to tell me that there are guys on both sides of the aisle who hate you, but you shouldn't be armed? No, I'm not saying everyone on the left hates Jews,
right.
And I'm certainly not saying that everyone on the right hates Jews.
Right.
But there's enough.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
So that's as far as Jews within America. And outside of America, it's a million times worse. Ask any Jew who's been to France for more than a week, and I'm not talking about that college idiot who didn't identify as Jewish once while she was on the trip, and spent 2 weeks on a guided tour of only specific parts of the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower. I'm talking about Jews who actually live in France, who go around with people who know that they're Jewish, and meanwhile they're getting literally up to and including murdered. A Holocaust survivor got stabbed to death within the last month or two.
Jeez. And what is the genesis of the? I mean, not that there was ever a rational reason for it to exist, but I would think by now, like, that would have dissipated. But so, what's the genesis of the anti-Semitism? Like, where is it?
It's twofold.
Okay.
Like, let's again look at France specifically.
Okay.
So you have two types of French people.
Mm-hmm.
For this, I'm not saying all of France is this two types of people, but for your question, let's look at two types of French people. There's the French guy who's been French forever. You go back 1,000 years and his people are still in France, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the French guy who is a Muslim who came from some Muslim country within the last 50 years. So for the sake of this discussion, let's call it the French guy and the Muslim French guy.
Okay.
So the French guy hates Jews for any one of a number of reasons, but not the least of which, and this is why the left hates Jews today, the left is very much the party of immediate gratification and immediate pleasure. And what I mean by that is immediate pleasure. I should be able to fuck who I want, when I want, how I want, as long as that other person consents, and without any ramifications for immediate gratification, I should be able to have my abortion on demand and not have to pay for it. So what that basically is, in a nutshell, is the removal of any Judeo-Christian values. So how can you remove Judeo-Christian values if you still have Jews?
But there doesn't seem to be the same hatred towards Christians.
You actually...
Or is there?
That's not necessarily...
Okay. I just haven't been to France.
Yes, but not to the same degree.
Okay.
Yes, but not to the same degree. And where you see this most is actually right here in America, because we all bitterly cling to our guns and our religion. And all the atheists on the left applaud. Right? I mean, Obama said it. They bitterly cling to guns and religion.
Oh, I see what you're saying. And they applaud Obama for saying it. Okay.
And they applaud. And they all applaud.
Yep.
And it gets to the point where if anyone mentions God at all, you get these militant atheists on the left. Now, I'm not saying all atheists. I'm saying the militant atheists on the left who can't tolerate for 1 second that you should believe something that he doesn't.
Right.
Will mock you and say that you're ridiculous, and they won't even discuss it with you because you're stupid. And then, all right, so great. So they hate you because they don't believe what you believe. And it's the most simplistic form of religious bigotry. And we see this all the way up to the political ladder, to the point where if a person says 10 years ago that he believes that marriage is between a man and a woman, and now, that was in 2006, 2007, 2008, and now Donald Trump says he wants to nominate this guy for whatever position, and everyone on the left says, wait, but his position on marriage. Yep. So because he's a religious person who believes in his religion, not as opposed to, these people who say that they're Jews or that they're Christians, but they don't really believe any of it. So because the person actually believes in his own religion, that means that you think that he shouldn't be able to be appointed to any position. So you are a religious bigot. Yep. And we see that here in the States.
That's true. Yeah, we do. How do you say it that way? We do. And you think that's the genesis for the hatred, that we're standing in the way of their... No, that's not the genesis.
Okay. That's part of it.
Part of it, okay.
There's a million other reasons, and the biggest reason of all, no reason.
Oh, okay.
Right? People don't need a reason to be assholes.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a thing that this whole sociology thing, that every criminal is really a victim. You've heard this, yes? Every criminal. Why did he grow up in such a way that caused him to turn into a kleptomaniac who robs 7-Elevens every day of the week.
Yep.
Right? It's not really his fault that he killed 3 people. What caused it? Right? It's not really his fault that the only exception now is rape because of the Pound Me Too movement.
Right. Yep.
Which I think is the most ironically named political movement possibly of all time, because whoever called it #MeToo forgot that hashtags used to be called pounds,
right.
And for women to claim that they were sexually abused to be saying pound me too are idiots. Whoever came up with that hashtag is a retard. But with the exception of that,
all right, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
But with the exception of that, so with the exception of sexual harassment and rape, so anyone except for the Harvey Weinsteins and the pudding pops Bill Cosby, all other crimes are excused. Why did the guy turn to crime? What happened that he turned to crime? I don't care what happened. You don't have a right to rob somebody. You don't have a right to kill somebody. I don't care how bad your life is getting. You don't have a right to go into a store with a gun, point it at somebody's head, and say, open up the register.
Right.
I don't care what happened to you yesterday. I'm talking about today. You don't have that right.
Right. Yep.
But they all want to know what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday? His mother didn't this, and his father wasn't there. And great. Meanwhile, you have people on the other side of that. Batman watched both his parents get killed and didn't turn into robbery. He turned into Batman. No, it's fiction. But the point still stands. There are orphans out there, even real ones, who, they didn't become Batman, but they didn't become serial robbers either.
Right. Right. Yeah. It is true. So anything you'd like to add about Judaism and firearms and
Sure, how much time you got?
Well, keep going. I think we probably have another 10 minutes to try to do the 30-minute segment. So,
sure, plenty. One of the things that bugs me is that the notion of killing is always wrong. And we have all heard "thou shalt not kill" as the incorrect translation, but most people don't know that it's an incorrect translation. Right?
That's
now,
true. I didn't know it was an incorrect translation. So, yeah.
Now, the words are lo tiltzach. Lo tiltzach literally means do not murder.
Okay.
If it wanted to say do not kill, it would say lo taharog, which is very different. Tiltzach and taharog are 2 very different words. One means don't kill, and the other means don't murder. So some people, especially on the far left, will say all killing is murder. But you have to be morally bankrupt to hold that position. And I actually think it's an ironic position. You have to be morally bankrupt and hold yourself in your own head as being morally superior. The people who say that think of themselves as morally superior but are actually morally bankrupt. Because in order to say that a Nazi who throws a Jew into a gas chamber is on the same moral grounds as a girl drawing a gun as someone's trying to rape her, you have to be morally bankrupt to make that equivalency. And yet, there are people who say that all killing is murder. So they're basically, without using the words, they're making that equivalency. Right? If you say all killing is murder, then the girl who fired in self-defense to prevent herself from being raped is equal to a Nazi who pushed the button on the gas chamber.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch.
And yet you've heard these people say this.
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard that at some point.
Yep.
So that's a moral bankruptcy unlike any other. So once we establish that not all killing is murder, because while anyone, who's not a complete Judeophobic asshole is going to say that, yes, it was wrong for the Nazi to gas those Jews, not everyone would say, hey, it was wrong for this girl to shoot that rapist or that would-be rapist.
Yep.
So once you establish that these aren't the same, so then the only question is, where do you draw the line?
Sure.
What makes this acceptable and that not?
And I'm sure there is some part of the law that defines it And I mean, is it
Oh,
similar
there's
to common law?
plenty of. Oh, you want to talk about English common law? So you're talking about right now castle law, yeah?
Oh well, no. I'm just asking if there is a parallel in Jewish law to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are specific times when you're forbidden to kill. There are specific times when you're allowed to kill. There are specific times when you're commanded to kill, whether you like it or not. And we know that, for example, Shaul, the first king of Israel, Saul in English, Saul, was commanded to kill a specific nation called Amalek. Literally every man, woman, child, and livestock. And when he spared some of the women and children, God punished him for not killing them.
Okay.
So he had a specific instance where he was commanded to kill and got punished for not doing it. Now, obviously, today, more often than not, you're commanded to not kill, obviously.
Right.
There's no commandment today walking down the street to start killing random people.
Okay.
Having said that, there are certain times when it's permitted. And since you brought up common law, one of the most classic common law cases is what they call, in America, castle doctrine, which stems from British castle law, which came from the notion that an Englishman's home is his castle, and he can defend his castle. Yes? You've heard of this?
Yep.
This actually stems, if you look at the British origins of this, it actually stems directly from the written law, where the phrase is hababa machteres, one who digs under. So let's say a person tunnels through the floor into your house, and it says v'hukal tov amit, and if you, meaning actually it phrases both of them as he, and he, meaning the homeowner, kills him, meaning the thief, ein bo damim, which means there is to him, the homeowner, no blood. What does that mean? There's no blood? It means he's not guilty of anything.
I see. Okay.
So if someone tunnels into your house and you should kill that person, you're not guilty of anything. Is that not castle law?
That is castle law. Yeah. Yep.
Compare that to what we have here in New Jersey, where we don't have castle law. If someone tunnels into your house, you're not given that much of a leeway. You actually have to wait until that person is trying to actively kill you or an immediate family member. The only difference between that and being outside the house is that inside your house, there's no duty to retreat. What does that mean? Is that outside your house, even if he's trying to kill you, you have to turn your back and run.
Right.
Inside the house, you can't stop him from doing anything until he tries to kill you, and then at that point, you're no longer required to sit by, and you're also not required to turn your back and run. You can actually defend yourself.
Yep.
So in other words, if you're upstairs and this idiot is robbing the first floor, you basically have to let him.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So the question is that the commentators ask is, why are you just allowed to kill a guy just for tunneling into your house? And today they say, is it really worth killing a guy over the television? So it's discussed, and is it really worth killing the guy over the television? And the answer is unequivocally no. It is not worth killing a guy for stealing your television set. But what? We know that if the thief sees you while he's stealing your television set, he is going to assume that human nature, you don't want him to steal your television set, and you're going to try to stop him.
Yes. Yep.
So because he is going to make that assumption about you, he is, based on that assumption, going to try to stop you from stopping him. He's going to prevent you from stopping him.
Right. Yeah.
So because we make that assumption that he's going to prevent you from stopping him, how is he going to prevent you? Up to and including killing you.
Makes sense.
So at that point, it becomes self-defense for you to kill him first. So even though all you saw was him robbing the television set, you're allowed to defend yourself preemptively from the assumed murder that he would do in order to get away with killing your stealing your television set.
I see. Okay.
So there is a little more logic to it than New Jersey allows of, he's just robbing your television set. But nobody likes a witness.
Right. Yes. Yep. Excellent. Well, Marcus, thank you. It has been a pleasure, and look forward to having you on the show again.
Wow, was that 10 minutes already?
Yeah, we are at 2
Wow.
hours, 12 minutes, and 57 seconds. So,
Holy hell.
oh, you know what? I did forget to ask you. I've been asking every guest, are there books that you would recommend the listeners read, consume?
Oh, definitely. Which subject are you looking for?
Oh, guns, gun rights, anything loosely tied to that.
Guns, gun rights. Yeah, I have so many I don't even know where to start. First of all, if nothing else, the Federalist Papers.
Okay.
You've gotten that answer before?
Nope, haven't gotten that one yet. Nope.
Really? Yeah, then definitely the Federalist Papers. Basically, every argument that the liberals put out about what the Second Amendment really means is proven wrong in the Federalist Papers by the people who actually wrote the Second Amendment. So they say, we don't know what the founders meant. That's bogus. The founders wrote exactly what they meant in the Federalist Papers.
All right.
So I would start there. Next, anything by Mayor Kahana. Literally anything by Mayor Kahana, if you can find them. They're not in print anymore, but if you can find any of his books, they're all gold. Not all of them are about self-defense, but the ones that are especially are worth reading.
Okay.
I'm drawing a blank on any of the titles right now, but he pointed out something that was brilliant in terms of defense extending to defense of others. He talks about how Moses, who was called Moses our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu in Hebrew, and it's not every Jew who gets thrust upon him, even every biblical Jew who gets thrust upon him the title of our teacher, but Moses got that title. He goes out of the palace right around the time when he first finds out that he was actually adopted and is a Jew, and he sees an Egyptian beating a Jew. An Egyptian taskmaster is beating a Jew, a Jewish slave.
Mm-hmm.
And what does Moses do? He beats the Egyptian to death and buries him in the sand.
Right. Yep.
So for all the Jews who want to say that it's not the Jewish way to defend yourself, you show me anywhere in the Bible when it's not the Jewish way to defend yourself, and I'll show you 1,000 other times when it is.
All right. That'll be an excellent debate episode. I just need to meet a Jewish person that doesn't like guns. So.
I'll introduce you to plenty.
Oh, all right. Cool. Excellent.
I'm not saying that they'd necessarily be willing to come on, but I'll introduce you to plenty.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Marcus, thank you. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Out of Order listeners, for tuning in to episode 5. That was Marcus Hirschhorn, or Marcus Max, and you could find him on YouTube. And if you're looking for more podcasts to listen to, please check out, of course, the Gun for Hire radio show. The second is For Everyone with Tony Simon, and the Black Bag Resources with Sean Fisher. And of course, always the Tom Woods Show. And this is Out of Order, James Kalita. Please stop by the show notes page, and we'll see you next time.